Oh, yeah. I have nothing to talk about. I have no intro into this.
I don't know how. Let's play a game of how can we segue from Caroline's random
Ooh.
thing that's going on into the topic of the episode. I'm drinking. I learned a lot today about the difference between matcha and
Yeah.
like sencha or other green teas because my parents went to Japan and Taiwan
Mm-hmm.
and they came back, and obviously what they brought me was a lot of teas because I like matcha. They don't. They don't like green teas. I think they drank a lot of tea while they were there because they learned about it and they did all the tea
Mm-hmm.
ceremonies and stuff. Uh, but they knew I like matcha, so they showed up and were like, "Here is all the tea." So I did a lot of googling to figure out what the difference is, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I'm drinking fancy Japanese green tea, and it tastes exactly like the other green tea I've ever had.
I can't tell if that's disappointing
No,
or like
I like
good
green tea.
because then you like it. So then.
I mean, I do see where Ted Lasso is coming from, although he was
Mm-hmm.
probably referring to Earl Grey, but when he talks about
Yeah.
the tea just being like hot brown water, I get that.
I like green tea iced. I like a good iced green tea.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
With
too
lemon.
bitter for me to do
I just, well,
ice.
I love iced black tea with lemon. Like, I don't like anything sweet, so like I don't add any sweetener or anything. But it's so refreshing in the summer.
I make an iced like oat milk matcha latte,
Ooh, that sounds good.
and it's very tasty. That's how I usually drink my matcha. But if it's just green tea, I have to do it hot. I don't really like any tea cold except for
Cold.
like the
I
matcha
don't,
lattes.
I don't like sweet tea. I know, like that's it's
Oh,
just
well,
too.
that's pretty much all we drink
I know. I
down
can't
here.
like it. I'll go to the restaurant and if it's not like unsweetened, I'll get it. I'm like, I cannot drink
No.
this.
I just don't like iced tea generally,
Mm.
which my poor parents, they're like, "Where did you come from?" I don't like key lime pie. I don't like
Is
iced
that big in
tea.
the South?
Oh yeah.
Key lime pie is like big
Oh
in.
yeah.
I mean, I like key lime pie. I just didn't know it was like a
It's real big in the South.
really.
I'm not
Huh.
big on barbecue. Like
Yeah, me
it's
neither.
fine,
It's
but
too messy.
I that's not my problem. I just don't like a ton of meat.
Yeah, me
Like
neither.
I don't like steak. I don't want just like a slab of
No.
meat. I want like a sandwich or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I don't like breakfast meat. I don't like bacon. I don't
Oh,
like
well, there we
sausage.
do differ. I
I
don't like
know.
sausage, but I do like
Everyone
bacon.
likes bacon. Well,
Yeah,
maybe not the
well, there's a
vegetarians.
reason
Well,
for
the
that.
vegetarians, they still try to get veggie bacon. I'm like, how about you just don't like bacon? It's so easy. See,
Because bacon is delicious.
my parents were like upset about it until they realized, or I told them that, hey, that means more bacon for you.
I mean, true. That's
And
fair.
then they're like, wow, yay, us having a weird child. The reason is because we were at our cabin and my mom made this like weird bacon corn thing and it made the cabin smell like bacon because it's a small cabin. It's like one bedroom. At that point, I don't think we had like the wall AC and the entire thing, dead of summer, just smelled like bacon and grease. And I was like, I cannot. Like, I liked bacon before that. And then she smoked me out and I hate the smell ever since. And like, I can eat it like if it's like on something and like I don't want to deal with taking it off, but I'd prefer not. That's my sad tale. I was debaconated.
Wow.
I know. Bacon has
Horrified looks
nothing from
from
everyone.
everyone in the room.
Wow, you did
That's
it.
it. I
You
was
did
trying to.
it.
I
That's
was
so
doing that thing where
impressive.
you're like half listening to the other person
And then
talking,
you're
and
trying
the
to.
other half is you being like, "What am I gonna say? What am I gonna say when it's my turn to talk? How could I possibly connect this?"
And she did.
If
She
there's one
did.
thing we can do on this podcast, it's narrow
Skirt,
down the
skirt.
degrees of separation.
That is so true. That is so true. Mm.
Um,
Well, on that note,
Happy Speak Now Taylor's version day.
yeah. Just know that our Friday selves are so happy right now.
They are.
And we're currently figuring out song pairings for the album. I have all of them done. Well, I have a few that I kind of may want to tweak. But I'm just waiting for the bonus tracks to get out so we can figure that out.
I mean, I in particular, I'm a Speak Now girly, so I'm living my best life.
Yeah. That was like my
in the future when when you're listening to this episode. Right
Currently,
now,
she's not living her
I'm
best life.
anxiously awaiting and if the lyric change
Better Than
is
Revenge?
true. I want to see if it's true.
Oh, I'll be so angry. I'll be so sad.
Like, I understand why she would do it. I do. However,
see,
it's just so...
the integrity of re-recording. I mean, I don't mind the new Girl at Home, but for people who actually liked Girl at Home, like that was their song.
Oh, I don't think I ever listened to the original.
She completely changed it. Like, it's pause. Go listen to Girl at Home and then Taylor's version, and they're so different. They yassified it, and like, I don't like what because she knew people didn't really like the song, which I thought it was a bop. I liked the song, but like, you can't. They're not the same song. And I just don't understand. Like, if the point of re-recording is to like one for one, it's not. But she already got rid of if this was a movie, so honestly, can't win really. It's one of my favorite ones on Speak Now, and it's gone.
I mean, she didn't get rid of it. She recorded it, Taylor's.
But it's not going to be on a CD. And like, that's how I listen to like in my car. Like, that's the main way. Which at least I can listen to my old CD and it won't go to Scooter Braun.
I feel like
that's at least gonna happen.
Would simply revert to the old days before I had Spotify, where I would just burn all my music on a CD.
I know, but I don't feel like doing that.
Just burn yourself a CD.
I know, but I just feel like, look at that cute CD. It's my CD, and then.
But you don't look at it anyway. It's in the CD.
But
player.
I have like a thing on my visor, that has all my CDs in it, and currently they're all Taylor Swift.
Then just keep the CD case.
I just think this shouldn't be an issue. I mean, she could have just put it as a deluxe song on a Target edition, which would have been super easy. That wouldn't qualify for the, like, she could still say it was self-written because, like, the deluxe. I mean, it was a deluxe track anyway from Target. I think that would have been a workaround. Because she could have just submitted the other one for, like, completely self-made. But whatever. She has a plan, I guess.
Well, it's fine. It might just be that we just have to listen to the original Better Than Revenge.
It's just an iconic song. And then there's the meme or it's just what she did. She was like doing like her live performance of it, and someone like screams from the crowd, "I love Better Than Revenge." She like turns dramatically, "Thank you." And it's so funny. Like, Taylor, channel that, Taylor.
Anyway, that out of the way, we are not doing our song pairings today, as we have established.
Did we? We
mentioned that we were coming up with our pairings.
That's so true.
Our apologies. That's coming in a couple of weeks. Next week we have
Dreaming of You.
Yes, another Old School episode. The week after, we shall commit our 1-to-1 historical romance to
what would have been
tracks pairings.
Great is to have it be released on July 9th. It won't happen. Physically impossible. But in our thoughts and prayers, it's releasing on July 9th. But actually, July 21st.
July 21st it is. Today, however, we bringeth you who am I? Little thou, the Duchess.
The thou.
You
are Caroline. I didn't know if you were still like you were still trying
a little bit. I lost it. Who am I? Who am I? It's the Les Mis again.
I was gonna say, we're back at it.
Oh my god, also welcome to Romance Your TBR.
Yeah.
Sorry, we never said that. Hi.
That's us. That was such a nice hi.
Hi. Literally, where's my brain? Who's to say?
Yeah.
We're giving you a trope roundup of Speak Now, the song.
Dare I say the Please Don't Be in Love with Someone Else chapter.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Well, except that's a completely different song, but...
Yeah, well, it's not like... I mean, I guess, but so many songs in Speak Now are about people being in love with other people and, like, that vibe. So.
Sure. I was just going with they're in their Speak Now era books. Which for me, I think you took it a little more broadly, which is fine, because the more book recs, the merrier. I managed to narrow it down to 2 categories, which are books that feature wedding crashers or almost wedding crashers. And then books where one or both, I think I managed to get it down to just one person. One of them is engaged to someone else, and specifically there is like a very dramatic, they get out of it, there's drama surrounding it. It's not like a very simple, like they just break off the engagement. There has to be some kind of dramatic reveal or
Gotcha. Yeah, mine are, because you said love triangle that are actually good, and just like engaged to other
I just
people.
had way too many love triangles, and I was like, hang on. Let me cut back.
Because like once you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, this and this, and like there are so many.
Yeah.
And
these are all books that I would recommend, because there are other ones that fit.
And I was like, hell no.
That I just didn't like the book, so.
Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, there's some we've already talked about, so we can get those out of the way. So for example, obviously, perhaps the most speak now of them all. It is. An island princess starts a scandal.
You're not going to tell me Taylor wouldn't applaud Cora for getting on that man's back and ripping his hair out.
She did that. She really did. I love this is not the only queer romance I have on this list, because I think that adds another layer to, like, they're engaged to someone else, but they're in love with you. The drama of it all. As she really said, I will show up at your wedding. I will get on that man's back.
I love her so much. And then she just went into a major depression. And really, she's just...
a sexy French depression. No?
I thought you said a sexy French dip. Like the sandwich. I was like, what?
A sexy French depression.
Oh.
Hers wasn't that sexy, though. Hers was more full of rage.
It was, yeah. She just felt so much, and I really love her for that. I love her so much.
Yeah. She really did. She really did commit to that Speak Now era for herself.
So yeah, she said speak now. She heard it, and she did it. She acted now.
She spoketh.
Have
you seen, wait, as a timeout, have you seen somebody, I saw it on TikTok, I don't know if it was anywhere else, but they did like the opposite. So I can't remember exactly what they did. All of the tracks, no, it was all of the albums, but it was like on opposite day. So debut was Tim McGraw.
What?
I will find it.
I'm so good. I'm like, what?
They took, it's gonna take me a second, so we're just gonna, there. Taylor Swift on opposite day, and it's Tim McGraw. Fear, speak later. Blue, 9,891. Anonymity, hater, nonfiction, nevermore, noons. Tim McGraw. Fear, speak. I really like Fear.
Wait, why is Tim McGraw? Why is that opposite day?
Like the song is about Tim McGraw instead of about Taylor Swift.
Oh, so they were saying that the album is called Tim McGraw.
Yes.
Oh.
And then
I
Fear.
See. I was like, well, that is the name of the song.
Later.
Fear is funny. Well, okay, I wasn't going to talk about this one. But for one where she definitely does not speak now, we read Indigo.
An anti-rec, if you will.
An anti-rec. We read Indigo. We did a full episode on it. And when so she was fully engaged for the beginning of this book to a man who went to study, to a whole man. He went overseas or something like that. I don't know. Probably not overseas. He's not that adventurous. It's kind of boring and horrible. But he comes back married. And she didn't say speak now. She said thank God. And just really got spoiled by a really hot man instead. So,
well, yeah, but the hot man did have his own.
He had his
wedding moment.
But she did. Yeah, she didn't speak now for that guy. She just said thank God and moved on. And I said thank God too, because I was like, she's still engaged. And then he came back, and then she was the villain, and I was like, honestly, better than revenge.
We didn't care enough about that man to get revenge.
No. She was just like, okay, I'm not sad about it.
No revenge necessary there.
None. So that's an anti-speak now rec. It's actually keep your mouth shut rec. Because her life would have been so much worse married to that man.
Whew.
Um,
I don't think I have any
yeah.
other ones that like we've really. I mean, we've spoken a bit about. This is actually kind of a speak now moment. The Gentleman's Book of Vices.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We haven't done like a full episode on it or anything.
No,
But
when the second one actually like officially comes out, which is I think next week,
yeah.
I'm gonna get the audiobook and we can do an episode on that later.
Well, I couldn't remember
later on.
So like I would put it into the Wedding Crasher category for myself. I could not remember how that book ended. I was like there was some like I could not remember how because okay, so I went back and read it.
Oh.
Don't worry.
Me trying to unearth it?
No, I reread.
The dusty shelves, my memory.
I reread part of it, and then at a certain point I was like, okay, I got it. I don't care about all.
I did so much of that for the Speak Now for my things. Like I just ended up reading the ends of so many books. And like checking them out from Libby, like searching terms. I was like, oh my god.
That is relatable.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one where I was like, did they make it to a wedding? Let me search the ebook. So this one is it's the other queer romance on my list. It's MM. We've talked about it before, but the one is he's engaged and he is obsessed with like erotica. He has a whole collection. And ends up getting the autograph of his like absolute favorite writer, and they begin a torrid affair, and there's cake tastings and other things, all for his wedding to this woman who you're like,
forgot about that.
He doesn't even want to marry her, but he can't like leave her in the lurch because he like ended up in this situation kind of through faults of his own. He like did not want to
and she
her.
was a good person.
Yeah, she was good. So he was like, I have to marry, like I will not be the kind of person that drags people into this mess and then leaves them in it, essentially, because there was a moment before the wedding where the love interest is like, leave with me, let's go, like I sold my shop, let's go to wherever, and he was like, no, essentially. And then the bride doesn't show up. He's standing at the altar and she doesn't show up. And it's like a very awkward, like the music keeps playing and the moms leave to go check and the music gets quieter and you're like, where is she? And then there's all this drama with other characters who like pull him off, and you figure out there's a bunch of little like secret hidden identities and things that his friends are coming to the rescue, essentially. But I reread just that much of it to see, because I was like, do they make it to the wedding? And they do, and he's just awkwardly standing at the altar and she never shows.
Sad.
So she spoke later.
She left him unread.
Speak later.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Like I knew once you mentioned it that he was engaged to someone else.
Yeah, but I had forgotten they made it to the wedding.
Yeah, and it was hard to like be angry at him
because
it was for a good reason. Yeah. I'm excited to reread that. I really enjoyed the writing, and then to get to the tailor bit where he protects the jacket. I just read the KJ Charles The Nobleman's Guide to Seducing a Scoundrel, and there's like a similar like super sexy, like super like specific thing that he does that one of them does for the other one. Oh my god, that book was so fucking good. Like I loved book 1, but this one, it like the romance is multiplied, the drama was like maybe less, but like in a different way. Oh god, it was good. So ultra specific love languages. We got 2 of them so far. We've got so many more, actually.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot.
Oh yeah. I guess kind of to go along with that, like trying to do things for a wedding to someone else, Say Yes to the Marquess by Tessa Dare. You've read that one, right?
No.
Really? So you just read When the Scot Ties the Knot, and we're just like, this is all I'm gonna read. And then you read Romancing the Duke.
Yeah.
Who are you? You've read that series so out of order.
When a Scot Ties the Knot, I read. It was one of my first.
It was one of the first
oracles. I had just heard good things about that book, and then I didn't read Romancing the Duke until a couple weeks ago. So,
well, Say Yes to the Marquess, a play on Say Yes to the Dress, is where she is engaged to Piers. He is an earl, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And they've been engaged since, not necessarily childhood, but a long time. He is overseas because he may or may not be a spy. She doesn't know that. I know it now, so you're getting that information. So he's gone, and she's like, I don't, like, he doesn't want to marry me. He could have had all these opportunities to marry me, so I want to, like, break this contract. So she goes to his brother, who is a notorious, like, prize fighter. Basically, obviously, he's always had a crush on her, but he's the second son. He doesn't think he's good enough. And so when she's like, I want to break it off, he's like, no, you can't. Like, you can't do that. And so he's like, I will, like, get you a dress. I'll get you a cake. Like, we will do a huge wedding. You just need to marry him. Like, I will not let you leave. Like, he can't come back, and then you're not his, like, fiance. So she, like, agrees, because then her, like, siblings are, like, trying to pressure her and everything. So the entire book is them doing like, wedding preparations, and, like, there's a great cake tasting scene. And then it gets to the end where the brother comes home, and he's sorely mistaken when he thinks he's returning to a fiance. Because she sure was not going to marry him at that point. And then there's a bit with a dog. It's a really good book. And his book is great too. But yeah. So there's not necessarily, like, speak now, because the wedding, they weren't getting married, but, like, it was close enough. It was close enough.
Also, speaking of brothers, I count this in my wedding crasher category, even though it's not quite a crashed wedding. My American Duchess by Eloisa James.
So that's why you read that one. I love seeing your reading trackers when you're trying to read tropes. I'm like, where is she pulling these books out?
The most random. I mean, I had been putting off reading this one. So in How to Be a Wallflower,
you get the friend,
the American Duchess, Mary, Merry, who is friends with the hero, who is also American, and you meet her and her kids and her husband, the Duke. And I was like, I love Mary. She's so funny. Can't wait to read her book. And then I read the premise of the book, which is that she's engaged to the wrong brother. And that is a trope that, despite this episode, I actually don't like.
I've avoided that book for that reason.
It avoided all the things that I don't like.
Yay.
I would be you might still hate it. However, like, avoided all the things. So the premise of this book is this American who she has had 2 broken engagements that she has broken off. She's where she basically thought she fell in love, and then later was like, oh, whoops, not into this guy. Broke it off. So they've come to England, and I think it's her aunt and uncle that are with her, and they're like, you gotta get married. Like, you cannot have a 3rd broken engagement. That's insane. People think that you're fickle already. So she has just accepted a proposal from this guy who, he has a twin brother, but he's technically the second son because he was born right after. But she has not met the twin yet. All she knows is that, like, they don't really get along, and he doesn't really like his brother, and he's like, oh, my brother's gonna, like, tell you terrible things about me, blah blah blah, whatever. She accepts this engagement from him. They're at a ball. She goes out on the terrace. She meets this man in the dark. They flirt. It's, like, incendiary. She's like, fuck, like, I cannot break a 3rd engagement. What does it say about me that I'm already into this other guy? Absolutely not. I can't do it. So she, like, goes back into the ballroom. He, meanwhile, is the twin brother, which she doesn't know. He's the Duke. He has had no interest in marrying until he meets this American woman who he initially is like, oh, Americans, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, oh my God, I'm in love with her. Like, she doesn't treat me like a duke. She, like, speaks very straightforward. She's not afraid of me, whatever. So he walks off that terrace and is like, I need to find out who that is because that's my future Duchess. I'm going to marry her. Gets someone to introduce them. And then they realize who they are. And he's like, oh no.
Are they identical? Could there be, like, a little accident?
I think they're, like, a little bit different looking. I don't know. I don't think they're identical. So we go through this whole thing where you find out, like, the brother's actually an alcoholic, like, he's gambled away all this property, all of these things. Like, the brother has been not cool, but he's made the Duke seem like kind of the bad guy, but she's spending more time with the Duke. And he, meanwhile, is like, maybe I just need to find an American. Like, it's not her. It's just any American. So they go through this whole, like, she's really, really trying not to break this engagement. Only for him to, like, kind of reveal his true colors at 40% or so.
Oh.
And she's like, you know what? Engagement
Consider it
over.
broken.
Makes out with the brother in a room in they're like at a ball. The brother she's engaged to says something really nasty. She storms off with the Duke. They make out for a while. Turns out the brother was hiding in the room. So he comes out after the Duke leaves and is like, betrayal. And she's like, no, our engagement was already off. And he was like, I think not. I need your money. Kind of threatens her and is like, you're gonna marry me, like, no matter what. There's all this drama at about 50%. All of these things happen where she's like, okay, I guess I have to marry this guy, even though he's, like, kind of terrible. I don't even really remember why, but, like, it was fairly valid reasons. She gets to the church. Her uncle is walking her down the aisle. She's got a super thick veil. She can't see through it. She's like, I don't really want to go through with it. Like, she's very nervous. She kind of tries to tell the uncle, but, like, the veil is in the way. There's all this drama. She's so nervous. She's not even really paying attention. She marries this guy. He lifts the veil. It's the Duke. And everyone was in on it. There's all this
the other brother?
Yeah, he's left the country. Which is crazy because the night before they were like writing letters back and forth where she's like, please do not make me marry you. And he's like, no, too bad. And then she gets there. I'm so sorry, I guess this is a spoiler, but I need to, like, I mean, you can tell what's gonna, like, she gets there.
There are spoilers in
and
this
you're
episode.
Like,
we
okay.
Know this. Yeah.
Like, listen, but the drama of her getting there and not being able to see through the veil and you being like, no, why? The drama of it all. And then the whole half of the book is just one of those, like, he doesn't believe in love type situations where, like, he's clearly in love with her, but he won't say it, like, blah, blah, blah. So they've got their own issues to deal with. But the drama of him lifting her veil and her thinking she married someone else.
Damn.
And he's like, didn't you hear me, like, say my vows? But she was so nervous, she, like, was not paying attention.
Damn.
Oh my god.
I mean, on one hand, she was fully marrying the other brother. She thought she was. That's a little too close to, was it Texas Destiny for me?
There was some, I can't remember if he was, like, blackmailing her.
Yeah,
I think
probably.
It had something to do with, like, her uncle had already paid some of his debts, and there was, and, like, she couldn't break another engagement. Like, there was a lot going on there, but,
That's fun.
I was like, if you're gonna give me a, like, you're betrothed to the wrong person story, at least give me the drama of you thinking you're marrying. Give me the Shakespearean plot twist.
Eloisa will do it. I either love her books or hate them. Like,
really
she knows how to make me angry, like, if she will. You know, like, she's got my number. Just like Lorraine Heath. Because I think, like, I love some of their books so much. Well, I guess in terms of brothers, this one's kind of funny because it's a love triangle involving a dead person. Oh. But the Earl Takes All isn't really a love triangle, but I feel like it's still because he always loved her, and she had that kiss with him before they got married, and then she thinks she's with her husband, but then it's him, and then there's a lot of shit happening in that one. We've done a full episode on it. You can go listen. But I classify that as, I guess, in love with the wrong person, or, like, married to the wrong person. And notably, the person that they're always originally married to, if, you know, that person ends up dying or whatever, they're always bad in bed.
Sure.
I read the Elizabeth Hoyt one, I read the Charming Mickey book, but the one before that, you, like, well, it was technically in book 1, Wicked Intentions, where you talked about how you saw her, like, go to his place and then she, like, walk out with her bodice undone and stuff. My favorite thing was that they specifically mentioned that her husband that she had would not make love to her in daylight hours.
Classic.
I love that because I was like, oh, he's dead. He's dead. And he did. He was dead. He got deaded. Because
there's no way that man survives.
No. Because I was like, oh, that's a fun little tidbit. That means he's not. That means he's not making it out.
You're not fucking your wife? You're not living very long.
And it was funny. I was like, oh. Because there was a second. I was like, oh, they're cute. Because, like, it was before I knew what happened. And she was like, oh, yeah, but he doesn't. And I was like, oh, that's not going to last. And then I realized what it was leading into. I was like, oh, okay. This is funny. And then you learn he never went down on her, and it was a whole thing. So
Classic.
don't DJ Khaled, I think, right? DJ. Right?
What? What are you?
I think DJ Khaled, he like admitted he doesn't go down on his wife.
Oh, yes.
Another one, but he didn't say that to oral sex. He said less one. So that, yeah. So I thought that was funny. But my true favorite one is One Fine Duke by Lenora Bell, which is also brother situation. So she's trying to marry his brother. They have like I think it's a Duke dossier or like a binder full of dukes, and her uncle, I think, is like a spy master, and so she's like been like raised in that household, and she loves like adventure and, you know, mysteries and riddles and stuff. And so she doesn't want to marry like a stodgy duke at all. She's like, I don't want a season, I don't want this, I want to go marry this guy named Rafe, because obviously his name's Rafe. Who wouldn't want to marry someone named Rafe?
Sure.
He is also a spy, and I just think that we would make a really good.
For every historical romance about a spy named Rafe.
How many nickels would you have?
2 nickels.
2 nickels.
Which isn't a lot. But it's weird that it happened twice.
It is. But the best part is that she gets to, the ton, and she's at the party, and she goes into, like this, like, shed, because she's going to change out of her, like, staid, like, ball gown and into, like a sexy red dress. And the hero, who is the Duke, he's the brother of Rafe, Drew, is also in the shed. And he's just watching her strip, and he's like, what? And then, like, I think he, like, stumbles back because he's just so blown away by the breasts. And she, like...
You know when you're breasting boobily.
So she finds him out. She's angry. He's enamored. And, you know, she realizes that he's the Duke, and he's part, I believe, of the Duke dossier. So her uncle wants her to marry him. So it's one of those situations where she doesn't want to. And then Rafe ends up getting kidnapped. Like, he was running down the street naked. He has, like, a courtesan mistress or something. He gets into some shit. So then she has to work with Drew to go find Rafe, because he's also searching for the people who killed her parents. And so the whole thing with the people, there's like a boat, and like it all ties back to the people who killed her parents. So that's also why she wants to marry Rafe, is because she thinks that they could take down the murderers. And it's a tangled web. But the entire book, she's just falling in love with Drew. And she's just like, I didn't want this life, but also I love him. And he is just such a good person. I love that man so much. And then there's a really great scene where he like wakes up. It's like the middle of the night. She's like sneaking through the garden. He's like really horny. And so he's like in his window, and he's just masturbating. Just thinking of her in the dress. And he's like preening in the mirror, and he's just having a great time, and she's just watching it all. She's like, this is payback for him seeing me like strip in the barn thing or whatever. And but then she doesn't see him like go to completion, because he lays down on the bed. And so she's like, I needed to see it. Like, I don't know what happens. Like, all the books stop before this happens. And then there's a great scene in a bathtub where he makes her like commanded masturbation, because she thought it's a great book. I love it so much. One Fine Duke. He has a dream of her in a bed of daisies. That scene's on the cover. It's in the epilogue. It's great. And he was just really offended that she wanted to be with Rafe, when he was like, but I'm right here. I am the Duke. Like, you want to be with him? That's kind of rude. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was
books where there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah. Naturally.
Dare I say too much stuff happening. Here's the thing. Would I really recommend this book? Not necessarily. Would I recommend it as a like, I want the vibes of Speak Now. I want the drama of, like, the wedding scene. I want the objection. Yes, I would. Was it good? No. Did I enjoy the vibes? Most of the time. By the end, I was like, this needs to be done. But I was here for the vibes. And that is On the Way to the Wedding, which is the 8th Bridgerton book. It is Gregory Bridgerton's book. Yeah, have I read books 5 through 7? No. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's the Bridgertons. Here's the thing. Gregory has, like, no ambition. To be honest, not a lot of, like, solid character trait. Like, of the Bridgertons I've read, I'm like, where's your personality, Gregory? Doesn't matter.
I mean, that was me with Colin and Sir Philip, so
sure,
relatable.
just imagine Jonah Howard King, and instantly your time improves. Colin, I mean, what is his name? Gregory doesn't have a job. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't really have any ambition. I think the book opens with, Gregory sprinting through London, throwing open the doors of the church with a slam, pausing to grab onto a pew and, like, take some deep breaths because he's so winded from sprinting across London, and then stagger up the aisle going, don't do it, then drop to one knee and say, marry me. And then the bride says, and then the prologue ends, and then we jump into the story 2 months earlier.
Yes. Oh, that's fun.
So I was like, the drama of it all. We start with the Speak Now moment, and boy did he speak now. 2 months earlier, again, Gregory has no job. Anthony is like, my guy, you need to, like, get a job or get married. One of those things.
Capitalism.
And Gregory is a Bridgerton. Gregory's a Bridgerton, so obviously he believes in true love. And so he's like, yeah, no, sick. I actually do plan on getting married, but, like, I just haven't met the right woman for me yet. And then they're at a house party in the country. Kate and Anthony are throwing a house party. He walks outside. He sees the back of a woman's neck. He's like, sparks fly, staggered, obsessed. He's like, it very specifically is the back of her neck. That's critical because he judges the other backs of necks. And he's like, never have I
job. He judges necks for a living.
Oh, Gregory. See, he's like, this is it. I've never felt this way before. This is the love of my life. She turns around. She's, like, blonde. She's beautiful. He goes over to be introduced. He introduces himself to her friend, who is also there, and of course to her. Now, the best friend of this woman is used to this, Lucy. She's like, Hermione's so pretty that, like, she constantly is fending off. Every man is in love with her. And they sometimes suck up to Lucy to get to the best friend, but, like, Lucy's just kind of there. They don't really care about her. This girl, Hermione, is already in love with somebody else, though. And Lucy's already engaged, but it's because of her terrible uncle, and this engagement has been arranged for a very long time, but they haven't even really come out yet. It's just a whole thing. But it's not official, but she's basically engaged, and she doesn't really care, because she's like, love is nonsense, I might as well just marry this guy. So Gregory's obsessed with her friend. She's like, listen, my dude, she's in love with somebody else, but that somebody else is, like, her father's secretary, and I do not approve. I like you better, so I'm gonna help you get my friend. Obviously, they fall in love along the way. The friend ends up compromised with somebody else. They get married. Her uncle is terrible and forces her into this engagement with a guy who everyone knows prefers men. So they're like, well, he'll be nice to you. Like, he's a really nice guy. And she's like, okay, but I want kids. Like, whatever. And his father is really gross, and it's this whole thing. But then blackmail enters the chat, so she has to marry this guy. I really genuinely think you might end up hating this book. Blackmail enters the chat.
I have no plan to read this book.
She has sex with Gregory the night before her wedding, but he thinks that means she's gonna call off the wedding because he suddenly realized that he's in love with her a little while ago and is like, marry me. She's like,
he suddenly realized he was in love with her a little while ago.
He did. Well, he saw the back of her neck and was like, oh, who is that? And then it was Lucy, and he was like, oh my god, I'm in love with her. And then Hyacinth is there. And they agree to get married, but then she gets blackmailed, but then he sneaks in her room and they have
Gregory.
sex, and he thinks that she's calling off the wedding, so he like goes out in a tree with Colin to wait, but then he sees her leave the wedding and he's like, pardon, and then he runs across,
Pardon?
and then he runs across
Croissant?
London to interrupt the wedding, and she says no and marries the other guy. But
Oh, yeah,
then
no, this
there's
is
like
not the book for me.
3 hours left of the audiobook with her getting kidnapped multiple times. Somebody gets shot. People are tied up.
Bombastic front eye. Looking at you with both my eyes.
It is so
What?
wild, but it's so wild to the point where I was like kind of on board. You know what I mean? Where like literally anything could happen, and I would be like, yeah, sure, why not?
I just think that is, again, a little too Texas Destiny.
Yeah, dare I say, like I said, would I recommend? Not necessarily, but if you're like, I just want some insane drama. Like, it starts out pretty normal, except for Gregory being a silly goose.
I don't... Leave geese out of this, okay?
Gregory's just a silly little goose who doesn't know what love is and falls in love with the backs of necks, as you do when you're a silly little goose. Actually, we're going to come back to geese in a second. We're going to come back to waterfowl in a second.
I was going to say, do you have more geese too? Because, like, I have 3 books with geese in them.
Not on this list, but I do have
We'll do a geese episode. We have to do a waterfowl episode.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, if you're like, I want the drama, I want somebody throwing open the church doors and like
that is, I like
down
that.
the
so I could just read the prologue and then nothing else.
I kind of feel like you have to read the rest though. Like,
I already know what happens.
It is so no, you don't. You don't.
Listener, I don't want to. Is the thing.
That's valid. But I do think it is one of the more speak now books because
it does sound very speak now.
He does.
I have to agree.
He strides that his mom is there,
and
his sister, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like sci-fi? We're in the middle of a wedding."
ASMR.
And then Hyacinth goes to the bride and is like, "Fuck you," basically. She's like, "You're a coward." Listen, the drama.
I think I'd be Hyacinth in that position. Actually, I wouldn't want Gregory, though. I don't want this, like...
I mean, he was, like, very charming. He's a very sweet guy. Like, there's nothing wrong with him. It's just that he, like, doesn't have any ambition or purpose. He just feels like too much...
I guess Colin Bridgerton, like, thought he was a great writer. I don't know.
Gregory doesn't think he's a great writer. He just is, like, hanging out.
Because I just did not enjoy Colin.
I mean, he's not Colin. He's Gregory. He's a nice guy. He has no job, but that's okay.
He's 27. I have no prospects.
I think he's only like 20. Actually, he might be 26. Listen, Gregory, what a guy. If you imagine Jonah Howard King,
that is true.
Points
I don't want to lower him to Gregory though.
I mean,
he should be Michael. Also, pining, malaria.
Tie her up in a bathroom. Not in a sexy way, but in a I'm gonna kidnap you way.
So he kidnaps her?
Yeah, he's one of the people who kidnaps her.
Huh.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. I will say it feels kind of like a fever dream after about the 60% mark. As soon as the blackmail gets revealed, you're like, whoa.
You're like,
where are we going?
They back up.
I thought this was just a like, oh, he's in love with the friend, and then the friend falls for him, and he realizes he was in love with the wrong person. No. I mean, yes. But then blackmail enters the chat.
Blackmail.
And then a dad who's trying to get you to marry his son and will fuck you if necessary for the heir. You're like, whoa.
Huh?
Yeah.
The more you say,
I'm not going to elaborate on that.
The less I know.
Yeah, so that's my, if you want textbook speak now, Island Princess and On the Way to the Wedding are my two, like somebody objects at a wedding books.
Yeah, intriguing vibes I have received from that. Nothing from that book I would not have guessed any of that. This next one is as speak now as you can speak, but it wasn't at a wedding.
Okay.
And you weren't a fit. Well, you only gave it 3 stars. But this happens like halfway through, and it's like a side character. So it was this one wasn't even on my list.
Buffering.
I am buffering. Fuck. 1 second. Is it this one? Who knows? There are just so many freaking dukes and so many wicked ones. How am I? Yeah, okay. It's Duke Most Wicked by Lenora Bell. So there's a scene. So preface, I guess, she's the music teacher. He is a duke who just is like, he has no money. He has a lot of sisters. He needs to get married to an heiress because he needs the money to like have them have seasons and pay off debts and shit. She is destitute. Her father is going deaf, and he is a composer, so she's been doing all of his work. She's been working for free for this duke because she loves him. Same. Relatable, not a good decision, but she's doing it anyway. And she loves his sisters. And so half or like a third through the book, he like has a little come to Jesus moment. And he's like, okay, I gotta get married. Like, I can't, like, I need to get married, and I need to like have money for my sisters. So he gets married. He gets engaged to this heiress. She's American. And our poor heroine.
What are you talking about? Our
poor heroine, she is not happy about it. She's sad. The sisters aren't happy about it. They like throw things through windows at this heiress chick. Not a great time. Flash forward, they get to the ball. It's supposed to be, I think, their engagement ball, and suddenly this huge brawny American man bursts through the doors.
Horrified,
and he's like
from everyone.
Horrified. Literally everyone. Because, plot twist, Vanessa has been in love with this big, brawny American who they didn't think was good enough for her family.
Honestly relatable.
Yeah. And he's just like, you have to marry, like, he's like, you're marrying me. I think they, like, admit to their affair. It's a whole thing.
I do love a big, brawny American.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's How to Be a Wallflower. Jake? Facts. Hell yeah. He's in my Speak Now one. No, he's a backup. Baby backup. And it works out in the wash. He's technically, that book is a different song of hers, but it's in Lover, so it's a whole thing. I have a spreadsheet. It's official. But yeah, her parents wanted to like leave the country. They didn't want her to marry this big American, and he found her anyway, and she gets swept off her feet and gets carried out of the room by him. That one wasn't even on my list, but that's a big Speak Now moment. But that doesn't happen in a church. It's just a ballroom.
I do have a Speak Now moment, sort of, that also does not happen in a church. Although I listed it under Wedding Crashers, but it's like an asterisk. Like, it's not actually at the wedding. We've both read this. And in fact, I just realized we have a whole episode on it. And that is Get Thee Off My Lawn by Daria Vernon. It's at her engagement party.
Yeah, and they just fucking...
And they... Right, he's like...
Great.
They've had this brief affair. She met him because she thought he stole her swan. There was trespassing. They bang in a bathtub a few hours after they meet. They're having a great time. She's actually engaged to somebody else who she doesn't want to be engaged to, but she's trying to save her family. It's this whole, it's like a novella, a longer novella, but a novella nonetheless. And yet, so perfect. So excellent. They make it to her engagement party. This guy, her fiance, who she just met, hella getting it on with her sister. Like, yeah, fully eye fucking at this engagement party, and then actually fucking.
I was gonna say,
but meanwhile, she and this guy shows up at her engagement party. They go to have sex in a stairwell, as you do. She moans. She screams. Sorry, everyone hears it and comes looking, but they find the other couple. It's a whole thing. It is excellent, though. So I guess it's not really Speak Now. It's more like Scream Now.
Moan now.
But it is like he shows up and it's like, marry me, essentially. Actually, I don't even remember if that's what he says. But I know that's the plan. I know that they get married afterwards, but he shows up at her engagement party. So I guess it's really more betrothed to somebody else than it is a wedding crasher. But he crashes her engagement party. So.
Yeah, that works. And there's a subplot of her mother finding love with some guy in the book.
His dad.
I don't know. Is it his dad? Which ties in.
His dad or his uncle or something.
I don't know.
It's a relative of his.
Yeah. I don't know. But it ties into the next one, which is Private Arrangements by Sherry Thomas. You just read it. Where there's also a secondary love story of, I believe, is it her mother?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a duke comes to town, and the heroine thinks that she's like, her mom's gonna like set her up with that guy, and then he does too.
It's a neighboring duke.
Yeah, they're neighbors, and he has like a terrible reputation. He's done some shit, and so she doesn't want her mom to set her up with her. He doesn't want that either. He's like, he wants to be a recluse. But then the mom is like, actually, he's kind of cute. I kind of like had a little crush on him back in the day, and so she has a whole romance. But that's also a book with multiple engagements. So many things are happening in that book. She technically had her speak now, but it was her scheme now era, which I fully support. Okay, fully support it.
Scheme now, scream now.
Scheme, scream, speak now. And again, spoilers happening in this episode. Basically, this poor woman and man.
Really poor everyone involved in this
everyone, poor me, but I loved it. This guy comes to town, and he's perfect. She wants him, and unfortunately, he is already engaged. It was like more of a like, not a love match, but just like a friend match. Like, he doesn't want to jilt her or anything. Like, he cares too much about her to do that. She has met this girl. She was like Russian. She was like something.
I didn't understand fully. They were like Eastern European.
So okay, so they were Eastern European. She was kind of like almost near royalty or something. She was like high up there. But she was like pretty plain, and the heroine just didn't. What's her name? The heroine? Do you know?
Gigi,
yes. So Gigi
Which
is
I
like,
never got why, because her actual name is Philippa, so I don't know where the nickname Gigi came from.
I think he explained it somewhere in there.
I don't think so. I read it like 2 days ago, and the whole time I was like, why is she named Gigi?
Well, I feel like I vaguely remember it. I don't know. Not a clue.
It's her childhood nickname, and I did not hear an explanation. So
I have the ebook. So
yeah, somebody look it up for me, because I sure was listening to that audiobook on like 2.8 speed.
Oh my god, that's not how you savor that book.
I wasn't trying to savor. I was in pain.
Should.
I was trying to get to the part where I wasn't in pain.
That's so funny, because I loved that one. But so she realizes that the plain girl that she met is engaged to this like vivacious, well, not vivacious, I don't think he's vivacious, this just like very hot, very good guy. And she's like, how do they match? They don't match. I am his equal. I should be with him. So instead of like trying to, because she knows he has feelings for her and everything, so she basically like writes this fake letter saying that this girl got engaged, and that they're breaking their engagement. And as soon as he gets that letter, he's like, thank God, we're free to marry, because he was like really ready to get married. And so she like has guilt, but she's also like, he's hot and we're meant to be, so it works out. And then obviously he finds out, but the kicker is that she actually did get engaged and she did get married, the plain one. And so if she would have just waited like a few days, it would have been fine. Long story short, he finds out, he consummates the marriage, and then leaves for like so many years.
11 years.
11 years. In that time, shit happens. And in the present, she has found a very nice guy who you meet in, or you meet her in The Luckiest Lady in London. And then he also appears in book 3. It's his brother, I believe, who is the hero of book 3, but it is interesting. So then she's like, hey, we need to get divorced because I want to marry this guy. And he's like, no, we have to have an heir, and then you can get divorced. Like, I'll grant it to you. And it's a whole thing. And then she goes to New York to try to save their marriage. And she's like, what if I shove my wedding ring up my vagina and make him fish it out? And she didn't. But if she would have, that would have been the most iconic thing I'd ever read. And it was at that moment I was like, honestly, just her thinking about that, 5 stars. Because she was like, what if I just like show up in his like room and I'm naked? And I'm like, it was convoluted and there was a lot of pain, but it was good pain. I liked it a lot. So yeah.
Speaking of shoving things up your hoo-ha,
Hell yeah.
this falls into my engaged to somebody else, but it's not a wedding crasher, but it's
it's just giggles.
It is it's unhinged. It's an older romance that I can see why somebody would read it and perhaps not like it, especially not like newer or contemporary romance readers, but God, did I eat up every toxic moment, and that is Suddenly You by Lisa Kleypas.
Was someone engaged to someone else in that book?
Yeah, so they...
Because that's immediately where my head went when you said shoving things up the hoo-ha.
It is Suddenly You by Lisa Kleypas. So it doesn't happen until the end, but she is turning 30. She hires... she's a writer. She's turning 30. She doesn't want to be a virgin. She hires a male prostitute for her birthday. On the night of her birthday, she's like, never mind. I think she actually... No, she never does cancel it, but she's going to tell the guy no when he shows up. A hot man shows up on her doorstep. She's like, listen, I've actually changed my mind. I don't want you. And he's like, explain more. Say more right now. She does. He's like, what if I just come in and we have a little chat and we make out some? They do. He doesn't say that, but he manages to work his way in there. They go to a party. Well, she goes to a party, finds out he's not actually a prostitute. He is her publisher.
And he was sent there by someone scheming.
Yeah. Scheme now once again. But he's like, you got a banging bod. Let's have an affair.
You got a banging bod. You got a great neck.
On a torrid affair. Got a great back of the neck. They have a torrid affair. Towards the end of this book, though, they break the affair off, and she gets engaged to a very nice guy who she's been talking to kind of throughout this book.
See, at that moment, I blacked out. There were some things in that book that angered me greatly. It was still a good book. It was one of my first Lisa Kleypases.
God, I love this book. Jack Devlin, unhinged. This is one where you really have to be like,
well, I love him.
He's not like
her
a moral...
decisions. Yeah.
Listen, this wasn't a book about morality.
Yeah.
This was a book about this woman who is pregnant but hasn't told him and is like, I need to marry this very nice man to, we're just going to deal with it this way. And then at a ball, he finds out that she's pregnant with his child, loses his mind.
As he should. I was pissed for him.
Corners her in the bag and is like, absolutely not. Like, takes her home, keeps her on the bed and is like, you're not leaving until you agree to marry me. And then later on, eats some fruit out of her vagina.
Raspberries.
So, was it speak now in the sense that he interrupted a wedding? No. Did he interrupt? I think they hadn't announced their engagement, though. And the fiance wanted to make sure that she had told him that she was pregnant before they announced it, and she didn't. And the fiance was like, hey, we all good? Like, no hard feelings about the whole baby thing? And Jack was like, about the what? There are some hard feelings. One moment, please. And then proceeded to essentially kidnap her and not let her leave until she agreed to marry him. Iconic of him. He seized his moment. He spoke now.
Speaking of another scheme, another Lisa Kleypas, Tempt me at Twilight. He said, I'm going to wreck the engagement. And he did.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah.
I love him so much. He
said
about that. It's the Ariana Grande to Tom Severin to Harry Rutledge pipeline. He got on it, he rode it hard, and he ended up married to her. And I cannot fault him. He said, I'm gonna tell this guy's father that he's gonna marry you and it's gonna ruin your engagement, and then you're gonna get married to me. And God.
Didn't he show up like at the wedding too? To be like, or was it already their wedding? And the other guy.
It was
showed
their
up
wedding.
At their wedding.
Yeah, you're right. So
like, no, Mary. It's kind of speak now
because he's all drunk. He's like drunk. He has a gun, so he's shooting now. So it's shoot now, or shoot maybe. And
I mean, on the way to the wedding is also shoot now. So
amazing. And then Harry is like, you don't want, like, do you want to marry him? And she's like, no, I'll just marry you and be angry about it. So we have a full episode on that one as well. He's been scheming like a criminal ever since he was alone. He's a little you're on your own kid. Yeah. So I just love it. I love that I see it. I want it. I like it. I bought it of him. I speak it. I spoke it. I spaketh it. I spuck it. I don't know.
So I've got not a shoot now, but I don't know what you would. They get into a duel, but it's with swords. And I don't know. I can't think of a verb that fits our pattern.
Sword now.
Sword now.
Strike.
Butterfly sword.
Slice.
Slice now. There we go. Stab now.
Stab.
They aren't really stabbing though.
Well,
Butterfly Swords by Jeannie Lin is a historical set during the Tang Dynasty. She is a princess, an imperial princess. She has been engaged to this warlord, kind of against her will, for political reasons. But
naturally.
someone told her that he's going to try to kill her. And so she ends up on the run, on the road, trying to get back to her home, and ends up running into this, he's called a white barbarian. My understanding is basically he's a white guy who wanders around and fights people. He has like a clan somewhere. It's not really important. He's a white barbarian. She ends up kind of hooking up with him, and they're like, she doesn't tell him who she is, but he knows that she's quality, and so she's like, oh, I need to get home, and he's gonna, it's very like if Tangled were set in the Tang Dynasty. That's my pitch for you. They fall in love, obviously. He figures out who she is eventually. There's a lot of drama. She like makes it home, but then her parents are pissed at her because she was supposed to go marry that guy for reasons. And there is political intrigue, and she ends up at that guy's house, and the love interest shows up, and they duel. Boy, did he speak now. But he spoke with his sword. He said, fight me.
I do love speaking with my sword.
That's all. The drama of a fight
that
in
is
Imperial
hot.
China in front of like the Emperor too. He's like, whoosh.
You can't see it, but she was slashing a sword, and then she just kind of was a little dancing.
I was shimmying.
She was shimmying now. I have another entry into the blank now. It's one we haven't heard before. It's a verb we haven't heard before because I'm making it a verb. It's sperm now. And Waking Up with the Duke by Lorraine Heath.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that's a convoluted book right there. In the past, the hero is, I believe, racing a carriage, and his friend's in it, and the friend ends up getting paralyzed because they crash it. The friend was married to a woman, and before they could conceive a child, he was injured, and so she really wants a child. She wants one, and so the friend is like, hey, or I guess the hero's friend, the husband, is like, hey, why doesn't my like best friend impregnate you? Why doesn't he sperm now? And she's angry about it at first. She's like, what the fuck? Like, no, I love you, I won't do that. And the friend's kind of like, or the hero, I guess, is kind of like, no, but yes, because he's always loved her, obviously. And it gets to a certain point where she agrees, and they go to a cabin, and they sperm now, sperm everywhere, sperm later. It's a whole thing.
I don't like this verb.
And she I think she gets pregnant. But they kick her. Actually, I won't say it.
No,
I haven't read it yet.
I don't want you to
I won't spoil
this
it.
one.
A lot happens, and you're like, how are we gonna get out of it? And we do. But yeah, it's a crazy one. But again, the love, like, literally, she's so forbidden because she's already married, and two, there's a lot of trauma and feelings and stuff. But talk about in love with someone who is currently, and he got his speak now moment. she did too. It was a book. It's been a long time since I've read it, but I know the important bits. So.
Well, that's me with. So I've got Her Night with the Duke by Diana Quincy, which isn't my favorite of that series, but it does feel
Yeah,
important
I'd
to
say it's my
mention.
least.
Yeah, I think they get better as they go.
Yeah.
But
Technically, book 3 though too is kind of Speak Now, kind of ish. Or it's not
eh,
really. It's technically forbidden, like not necessarily a love triangle, but he thinks she is fully off the market. So does she.
sure. So does she.
They
Well,
all do.
regardless, Her Night with the Duke is
Mm-hmm.
a good, like, if you enjoy the, like, engaged to somebody else.
Yeah.
That will give you.
And
She has a
also,
one night stand with this dude in an inn.
and it's hot. And
And
they
then the
get
next
it on.
day, they're like, "Oh, here's the guy who's supposed to be engaged to your stepdaughter."
He steps on later. Steps on now.
Jesus. um, I don't remember a ton about that. I remember it took a little bit longer than I would like for
It
the
did.
engagement to get called
Yeah.
off. But I think it's at the engagement party is where they
Yeah, well, because
formally.
the younger, so her stepdaughter ends up eloping with someone else, so she leaves.
So really, she got her guy got his speak now moment.
Which is why, because I don't think he was going to break it off, which I think made me angry because I think it, like, I don't like it when the agency or like the intent is like taken out of like the main character's hands and like the fix isn't one of them fixing it or something like that. A lot of times, sometimes it works. I don't know. But I appreciated that the stepdaughter knew what she wanted and was like, I don't want to marry him because she was like super nervous around him and she didn't really like open up. But it was it his like it was like he was like
Yeah,
some
he's like
nerdy cute guy.
secretary or something.
Yeah, and they had great
Yeah.
conversations and it was like a cute secondary romance. Um, so like, did I feel like he was going to break it off? No, but she sure did. So she spoketh. She's secretary now.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's worth reading. There are not a ton of historicals with Arab main
No.
characters, and that's a great series for each. They
Mhm.
each follow a different. One of the main
Mhm.
characters is Arab, as obviously as
At
Diana
least
Quincy.
one, yeah.
Um, oh, that's true. At least
Mhm.
one. So worth reading, but I think they get better as they go. But if you do like
They sure
that
do.
trope,
And then her Duke Gets Desperate one, which is her most recent one, that was a very fun book too. Um, what else? I don't think I have like too many because I had the Marquess Makes His Move on there just because for me it's about forbiddenness. You can. Um, there's Lady Be Reckless by Megan Frampton. Um, she she is completely, she wants to marry I believe he's a duke or some guy, and she throws herself at him, and the hero is actually behind the couch and he's witnessing this entire thing. But she's like making her case to this guy why he should marry her. He was engaged to her sister jilted him, she had her own book, and now the heroine is like, it's my time, you've been jilted, you're a little fragile, my time to pounce. And so she propositioned him into being like, hey, I am the perfect one for you to marry. He's like, no. She gets rejected so hard. And the hero is just like, oh my God. He's like, this is really embarrassing. He's like, oh my God. And so then the guy walks out. The hero like stands up. Turns out he's the bastard brother of the guy she just proposed to. She's completely mortified. They somehow get into it to where he needs either to like learn the ways of the ton, or it's kind of like My Fair Lady-esque, I think. It's been a long time, but basically they get into a like what's the word? They make an agreement if he like talks her up to the like his like step brother or half brother, whatever, then she will do something for him, which I think was just like make his way into society easier. I truly don't remember. They end up falling in love. I
What?
thought it was who knew? Who knew? I thought it was really fun. But truly the secondhand embarrassment of her just laying it all on the line for that guy, and he just said no. He just he spoke never.
It's rough out here.
And yeah. And so obviously there was like the class difference and all of that, but that's a classic.
Let me see. How many more have you got?
Not many. I think I just have 1, 2.
Oh, okay. I got 5 more. Hang on.
Oh my god.
Number 1, it's not super speak now coded, but he is engaged to somebody else. Forbidden. Beverly Jenkins.
That was one of mine.
Okay, well, I'm taking you down.
God damn. No, I'm actually so happy you brought it up because I don't remember much of it. I just remember that my one note I read in my review was that he was engaged so long to the point where I was like, at the point I was going to get annoyed for him still being engaged, they broke it off. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Sure.
So.
I also think it's one of the because I've read some where they're engaged too long and you're like, this is dumb. It's one that it makes sense that he's engaged as long as he is.
Mm-hmm.
And even had he broken that engagement off, it would be a much larger... Like, it took a lot for him to decide to be with Edie because he was white passing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just a matter of, like, difference in stations or, like, this is it was choosing to allow people to see him as a member of the Black community, which at that point in history was not great for him in terms of privilege and being seen as a human and all that. But I do love the wild, like, and then the fiance kidnaps her and drives her out into the desert. And you're like, why?
The start of so many kidnappings in that series.
There is a lot of kidnappings. He's engaged to a white woman because he is passing for white and therefore cannot be with Edie. She also does briefly have her own little side, like,
yeah, because then he's super jealous. He's like, we're there at the table.
That's the hottest thing I've ever read in my life.
Behind her chair.
Is Ryan Fontaine putting his hands on the back of her chair. For some reason, swoon.
Yeah.
Ooh, that man. Ooh, that man. I love that series. Swoon Now is Caroline's version. And it's for Ryan Fontaine. Especially later in that series when he's like the hot uncle. Bro, listen. Anyway, what else have I got? A Kiss at Midnight.
I have that one.
No, not me taking.
No, that's not that wasn't my last one. I didn't know if you count that one. I don't really remember much of it, so I was gonna ignore it. But we're not ignoring it. We're remembering it.
I just think we should remember him keeping the
her in the tower?
In the tower.
Yeah.
And going back and forth between pleasuring her and dancing with the princess he's engaged.
It was the sexiest thing because also it was like, wasn't it an anatomy book? And she was like, these cocks aren't as nice as yours, so I don't want to look at it. She was like offended that they were ugly.
I was like,
I distinctly
why is this
remember
the most ultimate edging? And going back and forth between that and literally dancing with the woman you're engaged to. Questionable morally, yes. Hot?
Oh, yeah.
Also, yes. I don't even remember how he gets out of it. I remember the grand gesture.
I remember because he needed her money because there were like, weren't there like lions on, like they had like a lion.
They had like a whole menagerie situation.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing.
Because he was a full prince, right? Like he wasn't he was royalty.
Was a prince.
And because I think she may have been like a Russian princess or something.
Yeah.
I really like that book. I know you said you haven't read many others in that series, but When Beauty Tempts the Beast.
Well, isn't the third one's on my TBR for another, like, he's engaged to her sister? The Duke is Mine, I want to say. It's the Princess and the Pea one.
Oh, I have not read that one.
Well, I read the synopsis, and apparently it's like he's having an affair with her, but is engaged to her sister or something like that.
There's a reason I haven't read it, and it's probably that.
Well,
so, we are who we are. But yeah. Oh my god, and the Ugly Duchess. That one again, I didn't think I'd like it, but it worked.
Well, I mean, my other fairy tale retelling I have on the list is Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman.
Oh, I was like, so many books have midnight, so many books have I was like, what are you talking about?
Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman, which
I was
comes
like, is
out
that
in
Lisa Kleypas?
August.
I was like, what?
No, it's a Jewish gender swap Cinderella retelling.
Yes.
Where she essentially declares her intention to everybody. She's like, I'm gonna hold 3 festivals and choose a husband, but specifically she needs to find someone who is not allied with the other members of her she's inherited her father's business, but there are these like brothers that are also business partners, and they want to make sure she gets married and they don't want to deal with her, and so she's trying to find somebody, number one, from the other side of the Jewish community to like for unification purposes, but also somebody who they don't like have dirt on, so they can't control him. So she gets the orphaned synagogue custodian because he's really good at spying.
He's got his little family of mice.
His little family of mice. I love that man. I love that man. Anyway, he's supposed to go like dig up dirt so she can blackmail whoever it is she marries. So he's like spying for her, but also they're in love, obviously, because he's the Cinderella character and she's the prince. It has a like, it's not technically Speak Now, but it has a similar like there's a dramatic chase. Grand gesture type moment where he's like, no, I gotta go.
No.
So I count it. I think
Nice.
It has the vibes.
I have yet another Lorraine Heath, Scoundrel of My Heart. I think it's her Once Upon a Dukedom series or something. The premise of the series is that there are 2 brothers. One is the heir, one is the spare. The father, halfway through book 1, it says it on the back of the book, I think, so like technically not a spoiler, but could also be a spoiler. The father gets arrested and hung for treason halfway through the first book. So book 1 is the spare, book 2 is a character in book 1, and then book 3 is the heir, and his whole journey to like understand why his father did that. And his book is with the father's mistress, which was amazing. But Scoundrel of My Heart, so it's like set in 2 halves. The first half, I think his name is Griff. You know, he's got the spare chip on his shoulder. He's spared now. And
Very Spice.
He is very spicy. He's a little spicy. Basically, his sister's friend is over, and she's always like been a little judgy towards him. He like overheard her say one time that she doesn't want to spare. So he's always had that, and he's like angry about it, whatever. They end up getting to know each other, and there is, I think this must happen like after he gets like his father gets found out, so then he's cast off, all their titles are revoked, they have nothing. He is taken to the streets. He is now owning like a gaming hell.
Street now.
He's street now. And sin now, honestly, because it's all about sinning. And there is a duke in town who has advertised his need of a wife, and he put it in the local like paper, and he's like, hey, just write me a letter about why you'd make a good wife, and I'll pick. And that's the second book is his book. But in this one, Griff is like trying to help her. Technically, he loves her so much that I don't want to spoil it. Things happen. Basically, the heroine starts the duke starts courting the heroine, and there is the huge dramatic reveal of when I believe duke is going to propose to her, and then things happen. Without spoiling it, it's less dramatic, but that series is great. And that duke, he's hot.
About like the entire Joanna Shoup that series where he keeps getting engaged or like courting each of the heroines only.
I thought of poor Andrew, Duke of something.
That man is on the other end of too many Speak Now moments.
He was so dejected by the end of that. He's like, Alice, I can't, like, he's like, please. And then he was like, hey, actually, whatever her name was in book 3, he's like, no, like, I can't Like, you're nice, you're cool, but I cannot even think about anything with you. And
you see that man glaring in the corner? I just know the instant I bring out a ring, he's gonna enter his speak now era.
yes, he had so many speak now eras spoken upon him. So that poor man. Oh, I love him. He has a swim now era too.
Swim now.
He loved a good swim.
Okay. I got 2 left. Silk is for Seduction by Loretta Chase. Silk now. I don't I don't know how many
Seduce now.
How many stupid times can we do this bit?
So many.
Silk is for Seduction. He's engaged, sort of. Well, he is not formally engaged. There is an understanding. Everybody kind of just knows that he is going to marry this girl who they've been friends since they were. I mean, he's a little bit older than her, but he's loved her since she was a kid. Basically, he's I think her father's ward or something, but he's a duke.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like kind of part of the family. But he's been gallivanting in Europe for the past few years. She's been living her best life because she's like wealthy and hot. So basically everyone's obsessed with her. So she is like not in a rush to get married. She is totally cool with this guy being off in Europe. She's not the heroine, by the way. I just love this woman. She's cool with the Duke being off in Europe. They're writing letters like they have since they were kids. And then her brother pops himself over to France, to Paris, where this guy is hanging out, and is like, hey, you need to be back by the end of May to marry my sister. And she's like, why would you do that? We were chill. You didn't have to do that. So he's like, ugh, I have to go back. He, meanwhile, has been, like, having affairs, seducing people, living his best life in Europe, which she knows and is fine with. She's not pressed. He's like, I'm gonna have this whole life in Europe, gallivant around, and then I'm gonna come back, and because he's always known he's gonna marry her, and he's not gonna do anything to betray her. Right? He's having his slut era now, and then he's gonna come back and be fine. However, this trio, the trilogy follows these women who, there's 3 sisters who own they're modistes, they're dressmakers. And they each have different skills. So this book is about Marceline, who is like the designer and is incredibly good at it. So they find out that he's coming back and he's going to marry this girl, and they don't want this frumpy other dressmaker to get her trousseau and her wedding dress and everything. So they're like, we have to get her. So she pops on over to Paris.
Everyone's popping over to Paris.
She pops over to Paris. They have a run-in. It's very heated. She reveals pretty early on, I'm actually the best dressmaker in England, and I'm here because I need you to get your future Duchess to buy her stuff from us. And he's like, what? They have this whole, like, they're super into each other. They play a lot of cards. They make a lot of eyes at each other. He takes her to a party. It's a whole thing. She tries to escape him. Oh, because they make out in his carriage. She tries to escape him. He ends up on the boat with her. It's a whole thing. So they come back to London together, and he just like keeps coming to her shop, and they keep making out and banging in the back of the shop, even though he's as good as engaged to this other girl. And she's like, you gotta cut this shit out. This is not good for my business or for me. Also, she is a kid, and his little sister died when she was young because his father was an alcoholic and killed them in a carriage accident. Oh, so he's got all these issues around young women, essentially. Where he like loves her daughter. There's a fire. He lets them live in his house for a while. It is unhinged. And what really gets me is this whole time this other woman is like not really cool with what's going on, but she's pretty nice. She's getting dressed well for the first time in her life. And she has her moment to shine, truly, because when he finally does propose, she is not having it. And I respect that so much. It was so iconic of her, because you feel bad for the other woman, and you're like, oh, she's nice, like, she doesn't deserve, and she's like, I do not deserve this. Good for you, Clara, because no, you do not. Also, it's Loretta Chase, so it's just so funny.
That is so true. Those are on my TBR. Nice. Well, the one that I will talk about has not been released yet. I think it's out on the 11th, so like it's almost here. It is Say Yes to the Princess
I
by
just
Sharis
requested that
Michaels.
one.
Oh, it's so good. It was a weird book. I have to say that. I didn't expect anything of what happened. I've said it before. She just licks his neck.
But does she fall in
For
love with the back of his neck?
honestly, all of his neck, all of it. She loves it all. It was a weird one. It was odd, but it was great. There's a moment at the end where he gets his little speak now moment. It's not at a wedding, but it is at the 11th hour of some negotiations, and it was satisfying. But yeah, I'm not gonna say too much about it just because you still haven't read it. It's an arc. But I loved that book. They were just such good people. Like there are just some books that are just so good because the people in them are good. And he was like hired to like be her keeper. He's like the royal fixer, and he just did not. He's like, I can't. He's like, she's like, she doesn't deserve this. He's like, how am I supposed to like seduce her? Seduce now? No. And then
Seduce never.
obviously seduce never, but then it happens. Oops. It I'm excited. Say yes, say yes. Say yes now. Yeah, viscerally the neck licking though. Like she just had like a huge panic attack, and then he just like takes her out to the garden, and then she's like hugging him, and she just starts licking him, and he's like, "Okay, you can lick me." Slurp slurp now.
What?
It's, my face reading it was just
Stop
like,
now.
it's like 5 pages of her just licking him. I was like, what is happening?
Sure.
It was so good.
Why not?
Yeah,
I
I had a great time.
don't think I'm gonna be able to top Slurp now. My last one does. It's someone is speaking now, and it's at a wedding, but nothing goes the way you think it's going to, and that's because it's Laura Kinsale, and nothing ever goes the way you think it's gonna go in a Laura Kinsale, because it's gonna be like 400 pages, and you're gonna end up stranded on an island with a baby penguin, and that is Seize the Fire. Seize Now. It's hard to explain this book because they go all over the world and a lot happens. But basically,
Search the world
he's
to make you feel
like a war hero, but he doesn't think he's a good guy. Like he's not a very good guy. And
So it
she
goes.
is the princess of a tiny European country who's been raised in the country in England and believes in democracy, and so she wants to go back and start a revolution in her country for democracy. So really, at the heart of the story, it's
Start
about
a
like,
revolution now.
there we go. It's about like PTSD and like idealism versus.
And you said it was based on Vietnam vets.
It's dedicated to
Dedicated.
Vietnam vets, and
Yeah.
you can see why, I think, when you read it, because there's a lot of exploration of like PTSD and what it means to fight for something you believe in, even though in practice you have to do some really horrible things. And she is the idealism side where she's like, yay, democracy, and he's like, cool, have you ever been in a revolution? Like, it's not good. And he's like scamming her, scam now throughout a lot of this book. They end up, there's some questionable representation of like Middle Eastern people, classic. It's a lot. As I said, they get kidnapped by pirates. They do end up stranded on an island with a baby penguin. There's a lot happening towards the end of this book, although notably not at the end because there's still more to come. She's trying to flee her uncle. There's these like, her parents were killed and her uncle's kind of been ruling, but he's a bad guy.
The uncles.
And he was gonna try to marry her, but lots and lots of political things happen in this book, and it gets to the point where they find her, they take her, she's gonna be married to this other prince for political reasons, not the uncle. Even though like she's fully had sex with this other guy, and she tells them, and they're like, too bad, we need you to marry this prince. And so she goes off to go do that, and our hero is left in wherever he is, somewhere else in the world. Who's to say, really? Only Laura. And some guy shows up and is like, what's up? The uncle, Claude, needs you to come to the wedding and object. Because if you don't, if she goes through with it and marries this prince, he's going to have his men shoot her. For political reasons. She's going to get killed if he doesn't object to the wedding. When he gets there, he realizes these people, like, love the princess, like, the people of the country. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, if I object, they're gonna kill me. But he doesn't care because he's trying to save her. So he has this whole plan but instead of objecting, he's going to wait until they process past him on their way out. He's gonna kill her uncle. But then, meanwhile, she has her own plan. She gets to the altar. They ask, like, do you take this man? She says no, turns around and says, I'm not going to marry this man, but I will stand for my people if they want a democracy, essentially. And a riot ensues. Okay, people are killed. They end up in a mountain somewhere. She's got her own she, like, forgets what happens. Like, she's in shock to the point where she has no memory of what happened. It is the most unhinged, like, I would put that scene on the same wedding scene, on the same level as the wedding scene that starts Heartbreaker, where you're like, I did not see where this wedding was going, but murder is involved.
Murder is involved. You're right about Heartbreaker. The Duchess, technically.
Duchess's speak now moment.
She had her speak now moment back then.
Really, the drama of that man sitting in the back of the church and being like, I'm gonna get killed one way or the other, so I'm gonna take out her uncle on my way.
I'm gonna shoot now.
And then her turning around and being like, democracy! It was very Obi-Wan Kenobi coded of her. Star Wars now.
Well...
So she spoke, I guess, is the moral of that story, but she didn't speak the way you thought it was gonna go.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. You just never know with Laura Kinsale. You just really don't.
You just never know.
How fascinating. Yeah. I had two others that we had talked about in our queer historical romance TBR Tuesday. Technically they're like engaged to someone else. I don't think they really end dramatically. Technically, I guess the one. We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian. The one hero is fully engaged for like a good chunk of the book. And then she gets she has an affair in England with a guy, and so then the hero, she like breaks up with him. And then the hero like moves in the other hero, and then it's their roommate era.
Did I ever tell you about the time a very old Italian professor told me to go have a passionate affair in Italy?
No, you didn't.
There's not much more to the story except that it was an elderly woman who taught Italian at my college and also taught my mom Italian when she went to that college, and also notably was married to the Latin professor who taught my dad Latin when he went to that college. So a convoluted web we weave. Also, one of my favorite professors that I worked for him. It was a whole thing. The point is, I went to see this old Italian woman. I said I was going to study abroad in Italy. I don't remember how this came up, but essentially she said, and I quote, go have a passionate affair in Rome and then come back and marry an American because Italian men are awful. There were multiple Italian women married to American men in that department, so that tracks. That's all. I told my mom, and she was like, probably don't do that. And I was like, but Daniela said so. Daniela told me to have a passionate affair with an Italian and then come marry an American.
C'est la vie now.
That wasn't relevant except to say I identify with that woman just going off and having an affair in Europe because...
Yeah. And it worked. It worked out.
That's my dream.
It was cute. It was like a secondary romance.
Good for her.
Yeah, because then she gets broken up with. It's a whole thing. And then the other one was just Gwen and Art are not in love because the two, Gwen and Art, are engaged to each other. They don't want to be. No one wants to be. she's in love with Bridget the knight, and then he is in love with Arthur. No, he is Arthur. Kind of in love with himself, I guess.
He is Arthur.
He is in love with Gabriel, who is the heir to the kingdom. There's a big battle for Sparta now at the end, and it's a whole thing. Most notably that they just are engaged to each other, but they don't want to be. And Gabriel is very conflicted because he thinks that his sister is like going to marry this guy, but he also doesn't want her to not marry him because then her life would be harder, and it's a whole thing. But 2 romances in that one. But yeah, I talked more about it in our queer historical romance one. But I think that's it. Not much else. I think that's all she wrote. No.
I think we've killed the bit.
She's been resurrected now.
Cease and desist now.
See? It still works.
Oh.
That's honestly, that's our Speak Now era. Before the Speak Now era, before our Speak Now episode, we spoke as close to the speaking as we could get.
We spoke a little too close to the sun, I think.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got. Go forth and listen to
Speak Now, Taylor's version.
Specifically Haunted, because that's the song I'm most excited for.
It's going to be a good one.
Gonna go blast it on a loop.
I know, I was listening to it all day yesterday, figuring out the songs and the pairings. I was like, oh my god. There are just so many. Ugh, I just cannot believe it's almost here.
Well, now it is.
Now it is here. Ah! Okay. Well, she's better known for the things that she says on the podcast. Whoa.
Stop now.